I'm Maui Arroyo. I'm a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader and a member of the Global Future Council. The Global Future Council actually determines what the agenda of the entire World Economic Forum is for the year. And I'm assigned to the council that talks about investing in the Sustainable Development Goals. And that sounds really complicated. How does that relate to us, and how does that relate to Philippine Startup Week? Well, I guess the first thing to talk about is, when are we going to go back to normal? That's always the question people ask me when they want me to find, when I go to the World Economic Forum and they ask me to find this out. My assertion is that the old normal wasn't working. Why the heck would we want to go back to the old normal? Despite the fact that we were the second fastest growing economy in the world, and we were number one in 2018, the number one country in the world to invest in, according to a study by Wharton. And wow, pinagsampal-sampal tayo ng biyaya ng Diyos. We have millions of dollars worth of our terrestrial and marine resources. Our economy was growing at 6.7%. That's the blue number. But poverty was at 8.3%. So thank God for Laos, which is the only country in Southeast Asia that has more poverty than we have. Because Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, they're all practically at 0% poverty, right? Vietnam is at 2.3%. Feeling ko mga batchmates natin yun. Diba? I mean, parang anong karapatan natin to be second to the last in ASEAN? That's the old normal. The old normal wasn't working. So when you say, when can we go back to normal? You know, we can't afford to go back to normal. Because if you look at what the old normal was, 74% of our people were living in poverty, right? So there's the poorest of the poor, 11.7%. So that's where the 8.3% of the extremely poor are. These are people living under $1.90 a day. So that's the definition of SDG 1, no extreme poverty. So, but the bulk of our country is not actually what we call the bottom of a pyramid. We don't have a bottom of the pyramid in the Philippines. We're like Shakira. We have hips that don't lie. No? What we have is a big hip, which is our political poor. We call them the political poor because they are living below the poverty line, but they have voters' IDs. No? 70% of our country is poor. And 68% of the poor are farmers and fisher folk. Okay, so they are small farmers and small fishing communities. And if you really want to go down to the nitty-gritty, 9 out of 10 Filipinos, including me, where we're filming in Makati, 9 out of 10 Filipinos have no consistent access to water and to electricity. 8 out of 10 OFWs have zero savings. They remit everything. 7 out of 10 Filipinos have no bank account. And the reason 7 out of 10 Filipinos have no bank account is because 6 out of 10 Filipinos have no valid IDs. 6 out of 10 Filipinos also die without ever seeing a doctor and have no access to broadband internet. We cannot afford to go back to normal. So what we should focus on is building a better normal. When you look at the planet side, it's not enough that our growth isn't inclusive. It's also completely unsustainable. Filipinos aren't giving nature the time it needs to recover. We are asking twice the amount that our natural resources can provide because we're not giving time for it to regenerate. So we're not only baon sa utang in terms of money, we're also in ecological debt. Okay? The last year that the Philippines had enough resources for every Filipino was 1963. Okay? Which is why we are, according to the Inform Index of Risk Management, the most exposed to natural hazards in Asia. but we're only 6 out of 10 in coping capacity in all of ASEAN. This is going to be a problem. Why is it also a problem with our lack of inclusion, lack of inclusive innovations, and lack of environmentally sustainable ways of making things and doing things? The other problem is that we are an oligarchipelago. Okay? 87% of our GDP, the income we make in this country, goes to 19 families, 19. And that is what we call the economic oligarchy. But that is not really what's strangling our country. The problem is our political oligarchy. Humiliatingly, if you go to Wikipedia, there is an entry for political dynasty per province. And our dynasties are not thin dynasties where it's Juan, and then after Juan's political term over, it's Pedro, his son. No, it's like Juan, and then Jose also is the vice mayor, his son, and then Pedro, his, brother, and then Carlo, the person who taught their aunt piano in the province. They're all, in politics. So that's what we call a fat dynasty. Kasi palago siya. Right? In fact, 40% of our national budget is lost to graft. Ito yung ninanakaw sa kaban ng bayan. 40% of the money. So for every 100 pesos you pay in taxes, 40 pesos gets stolen. Right? So, how are we going to fix this? So, one of the things that we're definitely going to have to fix is the fact that Filipinos trust each other the least. And it's been holding us back since the 1970s. Of course, we don't trust politicians. Clearly, they're stealing from us, right? But we also don't trust each other. That's bizarre. The whole world trusts Filipinos. We are number 4 in terms of shipbuilding, right? We build those cargo ships that take all of your Amazon and Lazada stuff to you, okay? We provide food to the world. We take care of their senior citizens. We take care of their children. The engineers in Saudi and the Middle East, they're all Filipino. Why don't we trust each other? Because we are dead last in the world, okay? People in Venezuela trust each other more than we trust each other. Why is it that no one hates a Filipino like a Filipino? Right? After the Korean War, Korea was a backwater. Who would have thought that we would now be buying cell phones from them? You know why? The Koreans invested in Koreans. Why aren't Filipinos investing in our own country? Oh, sure, we export people, right? Our educational system is geared to produce workers, not citizens. So they go abroad, and that's fine, and then they send money back as a remittance. And that's fine too, but they should also be able to invest in our country so that people do have a choice whether they leave or not. Right now, there is no choice. 6,000 Filipinos a day leave Ninoy Aquino International Airport. So, of course, we have problems with drugs. Of course, we have problems with crime. Right? If I was living under $1 a day and you tear apart families by having OFWs migrate, of course you're going to have those problems. Those are symptoms. Poverty is the disease. Right? Which is why, if you look at our report card for the Sustainable Development Goals, and this is pre-COVID, I don't have the post-COVID data. We are not on track to achieve them by 2030. And this is the decade for delivery. We have 10 years to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'll tell you why we want to reach those. Because especially during COVID, okay, if people are hungry, they will get sicker quicker. Okay? If people don't have access to clean water, washing their hands is not going to be possible. If people do not have homes, they have to choose between danger, basically getting infected by COVID, or survival. that is not going to be good. If we provide a better future for all, you might not have cared about a farmer in Lopez Quezon or a small fishing community in Tawi-Tawi. But a better life for them means safety for your family. And actually, if we invest in our country, you will probably make a better return. Poverty and eradicating poverty to 0%, just like Thailand, right, and Malaysia, which is attainable in our lifetimes. That's the key. So you've already seen the Sustainable Development Goals, right? I like to think about them like a wedding cake. So our philosophy is that the core or the foundation of the wedding cake is no poverty. That's goal number 1, right? Also at the base of the wedding cake is life on land and life below water, clean water and sanitation, and climate action. Okay? So, why is no poverty the munchkin at the core of the donut? Because I cannot go to a small fishing community and say, please don't dynamite fish the reef. Because that is the heritage of humanity. 80% of our oxygen comes from the ocean, which, the ecosystem is based on the corals. The person in that small coastal community is just going to look at me and say, aanhin ko ang heritage to humanity. Wala naman akong mapakain sa mga anak ko today. Until we have something that provides non-violent entrepreneurship, that makes more than violent entrepreneurship, and provides business in the most environmentally sustainable way possible, we will not progress. All the other goals are founded on that. So you will then be able to have quality education, good health and well-being, peace and justice. You can, because nobody's starving anymore. People have the dignity of labor, right? They don't have to sell their babies for 40,000 pesos, which is, by the way, the cost of a baby on the black market, right? They don't have to be a hitman for 15,000 pesos, which, by the way, is the cost of a clean kill. We don't have to live like this. Just like The Greatest Showman, we can live in a world that we design. How are we going to do that? Well, one of the things that I like to show people is this particular board or slide. These are the places I think would be great for us to invest as a country, and on the right are a list of places where we should invest. In terms of industries, definitely our creative and cultural industries. Why? Because that gives us a sense of us. It also teaches us to trust each other. So it actually gives us a sense of pagkakapwa. So the core of Filipino psychology kasi is kapwa, the shared inner self. No? That's why we don't have a word for hello in our country. Right? The kapwa is in everything. Kaibigan, shared love. Kalikasan, co-created. No? That investing in our creative and cultural industries will make us $2.17 billion by 2030. Obviously, we want to modernize agriculture, which will create 5.3 billion by 2030. And, of course, our coastal communities, fishing, aquaculture, and mariculture. That will give us 3.26 billion by 2030 without raping the environment. And because we've modernized the blue economy, we will also have sustainable tourism. So that will be a great thing for everybody. Where should we make these investments? You're going to see this list going from blue to green, because that is from where we are most biodiverse in the water all the way to where our biodiversity is on land. So Mimaropa, like Palawan, Eastern Visayas, BARM, the Bangsamoro Administrative Region of Muslim Mindanao, where peace just broke out. Western Visayas, Sox Cargen, Davao, Bicol, Northern Mindanao, Cagayan, Central Visayas, Caraga, and up north in the Cordillera Autonomous Region. So, This afternoon, we're going to have short conversations with other young leaders like me from around the world. First, we're going to be talking to Ayesha Vera Yu about why we should invest in farmers, why we should feed those who feed us. Secondarily, we're going to talk to Barca Mose, who is from the lovely big ocean state of Mauritius. And we're going to talk about the opportunities in investing for marine and the blue economy. And lastly, we're going to talk to Lucian Tarnowski of Sivana. Sivana is this great organization which brings together lots of different people from lots of different sectors, like the government and the youth sector, to work together so that we can achieve the SDGs. Because all of us need all of us. And none of us are safe until everybody is safe. Let's go talk to them.
Hi, let's talk about building a better normal with the CEO and founder of Advancement for Rural Kids, Ayesha Vera Yu. So let's talk about a better normal for our farmers.
Hi.
Hi, Ayesha. How are you?
Good. How are you, Maui? It's nice to see you.
Thanks for being here, even though it's kind of late in New York. I know your organization's partly in the Philippines and partly in the US. So let's get right to it.
Yes.
So we're talking about building a better normal and making your money matter. Something I think you truly understand because before you founded ARC, let me go back to your previous life. Before you founded ARC, you were a banker for 11 years, right? And I always ask bankers this: do you think that the risk reward ratio is bad when it comes to SDG investing, or why don't we do more of it? Why don't we do more investments that matter? Why do you think there's less of that?
Well, one, we should do more of it. Yeah. That's number one. We cannot afford not to invest in SDG goals. Yeah. I think, when you think about investing and you think about where to put your money, I think you also have, it's like you also have to think about how do you want your life to be, your children's life to be, this world? How do you want this world to be? And so it's not just about getting a, on average, right? The stock market gives you like an 6 to 8% return on a historical basis. And then since 2009, when it was, quite bad and there was a financial crisis, from then until now, the stock market has gone up 15%. If you think about PE investing, their returns are around 15%. And then if you think about VC investing or early stage, prior to the tech boom, it was like around 3%. And with the tech boom, you're talking about 15 to 27%. What I'm learning is that right now, impact investing in ASEAN is actually around 18%. And that's pretty much stacking up to where the market is. And I would say that that's actually a more real return, because the return that we currently have in the markets right now, to a certain degree, it's inflated. And what I mean by inflated is it doesn't really capture the true cost of a product or a service. There is a lot of embedded costs that get subsidized. There's a lot of environmental costs that doesn't get into the profits and into the stock price. And so I think that, and that's why I go back to the first point I make, like when you are thinking of investing and when you're thinking of getting a return on your money, it's almost, you have to ask yourself, well, who do you want to invest for, right? I'm investing for my kid. I'm investing for my son's kids. And if I'm investing for my kid and for my son's kids, then I have to really invest in creating a world that's equitable, in creating a world that actually honors the earth and works with the earth and doesn't pollute it, because the earth is really the source of everything that helps us survive, from food and water. We can't even think of like venturing, or doing something with our passions if we can't eat, right? And so, so I think the fact that investing right now in, impact investing in ASEAN is at 18%, I think that's a pretty good deal. I think that's an amazing return.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you put it, because I mean, clearly we can leave our kids money. We can't exactly leave them like a new planet.
No, you can't.
Planet.
What's the cost of like colonizing another planet? Because basically that's what we would have to do if we were to give up on this planet, right?
Yeah. Tsaka good luck na lang sa atin sa Pilipinas, kasi for sure, I mean, malulunod na tayo, right? We'd like the
Exactly. I wonder, like, we're going from 7,100 islands to how many? 6,000? But at some, in like, it's, I don't mean to be flip, and I don't mean to make fun of it, but it's real, right? It's awful. Yeah. And so I'm, when even now, even in my own personal money, right, I look at the mutual funds that I'm in, and I look at who are they investing in. I really peel back to see what companies are in there, because I don't want to put my money in a company that's actually doing more damage to me, my family, and my environment.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, obviously the cognitive burden to look at your investments is kind of hard, but I think I think bringing up hunger, because you did bring it up, lalo na ngayon with COVID, diba? People who are hungry, right? They actually get sicker faster, right? So maybe we didn't care about, maybe people in the US and people around the world, and certainly people here in Metro Manila didn't care much about a small farmer in Coron or in Capiz, where your sites are. But right, I think Visayas and Mindanao showed the highest hunger in July.
Yeah.
Right? So hunger is gonna kill more people than
the pandemic.
The pandemic. So it was like, if you don't care about them now, it's like you have to, because otherwise it'll mean more safety for our families, including for you in New York, right? Because it's a pandemic. COVID will be everywhere, and if you give it a chance, diba?
Oh yeah. Well, one, it's already, COVID is everywhere. That's number one. Right. Number two, I think, for quite some time, and I'm going to say this in a very relative basis, where, we've had like a very peaceful period of time where, there's a sense of security, business, people invested, businesses grew, lalo na sa Pilipinas, right? It attracted so much investment, in the BPO space, in the real estate space, and in many other industries. And I think, what we have forgotten is that there is a value to peace, and peace is highly related to security, to food security. Food security is actually a national security. And I'm still kicking myself for doing this, because someone had done like an amazing research work on actually tracing how hunger and also just how, lack of access to food can actually lead to civil strife and to wars. And the analysis basically showed that if a family or if a person is already spending more than 25% of their discretionary income, bale yung kanilang net take home. If they're spending more than 25% of their net cash take home on food, it puts that family, that country, that nation at a higher risk for civil war. And we have data, recent data for this. So if you recall, so 2010, I believe, was when the Arab Spring started, yung nagsimulang pumutok sa Tunisia. Tunisian families were spending 85% of their net take home on food, right? And so, and that's just recent. We can go back with Marie Antoinette, who lost her head, right? Because the population, because the people didn't have food. And actually, that was, when the pandemic happened, that was actually one of the things that was really clear in my mind, and it was also clear in the minds of our partners. And what I mean by our partners is, in this case, yung mga kapitans sa mga barangays, sa mga communities that we partner with, the village chiefs. By the way, is it okay for me? Kasi like I can go all Tagalog, but I don't know. Do you have an international audience for this?
Let's just
do Taglish. Can I do Taglish? Okay. So, I remember, after the lockdown, and as soon as the Philippine government called for a lockdown, I basically told my team, I said, okay, listen, walang trabajo, don't work, just secure yourself, secure your family, check in after a week. And after they checked in, it was all about, okay, how do we arm the team with the tools they need with this huge change that's happening, right? So one of the things in ARC is we do have a psychotherapist or psychologist as a consultant on a monthly retainer consultant. So he was actually able to help us get the tools to make sure that we are managing through this crisis. And that actually helped us after, the second week to actually engage back with our partner communities and to say, Kapitan, what's going on? What are you seeing? And, the first one that called us back, Kapitan siya ng Bugtong, it's Kapitan Erding. And what he told me was, I'm really worried dahil, people here are beginning to feel and experience hunger. Only a third of the people that were designated to get the SAP, got the SAP, the cash program. And feeling niya at mga kagawad ay binabato na sila ng community. Like there was already the beginning of distrust, the beginning of strife. And he was so determined. Mm-hmm. Sorry, let me just finish this one point.
Yeah.
He was so determined for that not to happen that he partnered with us on Feedback, which was the very first time that we were piloting it. And we piloted Feedback, which is a vegetable exchange program. There were 3 partners that did it with us. Pero Bugtong, because he really did not want his community to go on that strife state, even with 17 members, he said, let's do it. Let's do it. Simula na tayo. When people see it, dadagdag yat the next day. And he was right. It was a fishing community that never had gardens before. And by the end of the program, 70% of the community had gardens. By week 5, everyone was already securing their food. Everyone was healthy. People were happy because of that sense of security. And even as early as week 2 or week 3 of the program, people were beginning to come up with ventures on their own. And even after na lockdown ulit yung corona and we had to suspend the program for 3 weeks, even during that 3-week period, fisher folks who never planted before continue to plant, continue to harvest, and they traded with each other and sold to each other, which was, sabi ni Kapitan Erding, something he's never seen before in his community.
So so this is kind of like a Tagalog copy, because the next question I was going to ask is what is the feedback program? So feeding farmers, feeding those who feed us. So basically you're tell us a little bit more about how much money you need to create these vegetable gardens. And I really like how you're creating sort of local community markets and the impact. Of course, Ignite Impact is a partner helping you validate.
Yes.
Helping you validate the impact for the farmers in Capiz and Coron. So tell us a little bit about the feedback program, which is very recent, and the brief results from that, how much you need for that. And then what does ARC do in general?
Yes. So
feedback first.
I'm going to start with what does ARC do in general.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we partner with rural communities who want to secure their food, who want to get their kids to school, and who want to create a self-sustaining future. And prior to the pandemic, ARC's signature or keystone program is the ARC Lunch. And this was a 5 cent US dollar, or in peso, it's 2 peso and 50 cent school lunch. It's the only lunch in the world that parents contribute to day one, and they fully fund on their own after 3 years. So it's completely self-sustaining. And we've served 1 million lunches at 50 cents.
How does that work?
So the lunches are served in school. It is operated by all the parents. So each parent must volunteer, and there's one hired chef, and everything, 100% of what's in the lunch of vegetables and proteins, 100% of that is bought from parents in the community. And so exactly. And so from the ARC Lunch, what it really does is, in solving hunger and malnutrition and getting kids back to school, the school lunch was that solution. If there's lunch in school, then kids are going to come to school. They're not going to, and because they're doing well, they're not sick, they're not hungry, they're not going to drop out, you know?
Right.
Because parents, I think this was like people think that like, oh, poor people want to keep their kids in farms and work the farms. And that is a flat out lie. I've been doing ARC for like 11 years now. Every parent I meet has one dream. And that one dream is to get their kids to school and for their kids to finish college. That's really the dream. And so it was really hunger that was keeping kids away from school. And so so what the ARC Lunch does is it solves that. It gets kids back to school. So attendance goes up from 70 over to 90%. Malnutrition goes down from 30 down to 0. And then there's new income because we buy everything from the parents in the community. So from an investment standpoint, literally when we're co-investing with that community, all the money is staying in that community, and it's literally fueling ventures and work in that community. And also when I think of IRR, I'm just going to do a little plug. For every dollar that we put in the ARC Lunch, we actually get over 7 times in return. And
that's
now
a pretty good return.
It's a pretty good return.
You're not going to find that in the stock market. Right?
Exactly. And then feedback, the way it started, as I said, it was really prompted by the pandemic because the schools are closed. So even if we wanted to partner with a community to solve hunger, we couldn't do it from the school. It's closed. Number 2, we couldn't do it in a centralized basis because we don't want spread. And so what we did is we decentralized it. We brought the food from the school into the neighborhoods, right? Because in a neighborhood, you have about like 15 to 25, families. So when they have to come once a week, they could social distance. There's no transmission and no spread. The second thing that we also did, so in feedback, is we went from a cooked lunch to fresh vegetable baskets. Why? Because all the parents are at home anyway, so they can cook for their family this basket of vegetables of 6 kilos that will feed their family at least 3 to 4 meals for that week. They could bring that home. And what's amazing about feedback, so this part is not what's amazing. This is actually the key ingredient. I'm already giving you all of the código. Okay,
yeah.
So someone should be able to do this. The código to feedback is we created a market, just like the ARC Lunch created a market. Feedback creates a market. That's really what inspired people to plant vegetables in their backyards, right? Once Kapitan Erding said, ARC, partner tayo. As soon as he said that, and as soon as he got the buy-in from all the Kagawads, and as soon as we identified their dreams that we want to achieve at the end of the program, all of a sudden there's a flyer that goes out and says, there's feedback. It's like an 8-week vegetable exchange where you bring your vegetables and ARC will buy it from you. And it's the vegetables that they brought that we then gave back to them. And that's why it's feedback.
Ah.
Back for two reasons. Una, we found out through this process that, or we found out through the pandemic that our food system is really broken, right? So many of the food that farmers actually had to access or would buy, those food would come from like other villages, maybe 3 hours away or more. Sometimes that food comes from another province, and sometimes it even comes, and most times it comes from another island, which was actually the case for Coron. All of the vegetables in Coron was coming from Mindoro and Manila, if you can imagine. So with the lockdown, there's nothing, right? And so there was really a disruption in the local food supply. So what the farmers were getting was not sufficient. So when you think about health, right, what are you going to buy? The second thing that we also found through this is that the fisher folks were really hurt because for many of them, you know, again, the transportation and the flow of food hurt them. Right. The same thing for the farmers, right? As you guys saw, where, you know, farmers in Luzon were throwing away vegetables because they didn't have a market for it. Mm-hmm. And there's just huge amounts of unemployment, right? So, and many of the people in fishing communities and farming communities do depend on extra income from that other family member who's in town. And so that we saw that Una, there was already pre-pandemic, there was already a huge gap between the living experience of someone in an urban setting versus someone in a rural setting. Those in the rural setting were really living on a subsistence basis. And then with a pandemic, you're really putting them at such like desperate situation, right? And we don't want any desperate situation because that's when you have more gulo, when you put people in a desperate situation.
Yeah. So we're sadly running out of time, but I mean, I just want to summarize, right? Mm-hmm. That basically, I think for an investment of 2,500, let me clarify with you. For an investment of 2,500 pesos, I basically give people an income because they're trading with each other, and I'm eradicating hunger in communities, in agricultural communities, right?
Both agricultural and fishing communities. For 2,500, you basically are securing a family's food for life, because the program inspires every family to start a garden. And for an 8-week period, they're not going to sell everything that they're harvesting. They're going to consume it first. And what they're actually selling into the exchange, or what they're bringing to exchange, is surplus. It's excess. And it's those excess and surplus that gives us the basis, the start, the platform to begin ventures, to start negocios. So that's how it works. So it's 2,500 pesos. We hope that many people would join us and solve hunger and put communities in a self-sustaining path.
Yeah, and definitely partner with, not just like loan to farmers and fisher folk, but to partner with them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yan ang kailangan natin sa Pilipinas. So Thanks so much, Ayasha. I know that you're in New York and it's really, really late, but you know, Diane and maybe the rest of the team will be in the Q&A later, because we have to start talking to Barca about oceans. So thanks so much, Ayasha.
Thank you, Melly.
Reach Ayasha at ruralkids.org. See you.
Salamat.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi. So we're back at Philippine Startup Week for the panel on Building a Better Normal by Ignite Impact Fund. So our first speaker talked about investing in small farmers and our modernizing agriculture. But we are an archipelago, so we should talk about investing in the oceans. And our next panelist is Barca Mose. Her bio is, of course, on Attendify, but she spent most of her career as a diplomat. And she's a young leader who started the Seeing Blue movement in Mauritius. So which is a small island nation. So I'm so excited to talk to Barca. Hi, Barca.
Hi, Maui.
Hi. So, as I said, the Philippines is it's an archipelago. Technically, we have over 7,600 islands, and our territory is more than two-thirds water. The thing is, even though we have great young leaders like Anna Oposa, who you know, right? I mean, you've met Anna.
She's an inspiration.
Yeah, she's so awesome. She's like Chief Mermaid. We haven't really invested in the Philippines. It's sort of spotty, our track record, investing in the what's called the blue economy, investing in our oceans. We don't even really have a government department that's dedicated to our marine resources, oddly enough, even though most of our territory is water. What's your experience been in Mauritius?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Maui. And it's so exciting to be talking about oceans. I really believe that we should be cross-pollinating, sharing ideas across the board, across the world. And as I said, Anna Oposa is one of my inspirations and sort of a little bit the spark behind Seeing Blue. In Mauritius, the conversation around the blue economy started perhaps a decade ago, very strongly when at the same time, there were conversations around the green economy at the international level. As a small island developing state, Mauritius realized that our land surface isn't that big, so we need to be thinking about oceans. But oceans, as you know, they're not as straightforward as land. You don't actually see what's under the sea. And initial conversations tended to be about traditional sectors like fisheries, shipping, and even hydrocarbons.
Sorry, hydro what?
And hydrocarbons, fossil fuels, unfortunately.
Right.
And this per se is not a bad thing because these are critical sectors both for Mauritius and for Philippines as well. However, there was a need to push the reflection towards next generation sectors, like not just upgrading the seafood sector to be more sustainable, not just upgrading the shipping sector to be more innovative, but also thinking about what can we do with biotechnology, what can we do with conservation, ocean finance, and other innovative sectors of the ocean. So these conversations started picking up at international level, but there was still the need to build the capacity of people to engage with these issues. And one of the biggest lessons that I had at that time as a young diplomat promoting blue economy was meeting Dr. Enric Sala, who is Explorer-in-Chief for National Geographic. And he asked me, "Do you scuba dive?" And I said, no. At that time, no. And he asked me this very straightforward question: how can you draft policy about something that you haven't seen for yourself?
That's true.
And this indeed really had me thinking, how do we get people involved? Not just the policy sector, but also civil society, also young people in Mauritius. And we realized that most young people did not know how to swim, let alone dive.
But we're
an island. I know.
How does that work?
I know. As we go to the sea, we paddle in the water, but that's about it. So the ownership of our ocean resources cannot happen unless we actually see what's in there, we understand what's in there. And this is how Seeing Blue came about. The idea was really to empower young people to take ownership of their oceans and to be active participants in their ocean. And you mentioned not having a department or a dedicated government institution. I'm happy for us to probe more into that question and how to build institutional partnerships to make the blue economy happen in an inclusive way. So in Mauritius, around maybe 5 years ago, 5 or 6, 7 years ago, we set up the Ministry of Ocean Economy. However, just having a department with a label is not enough. Because what we did was we converted the Ministry of Fisheries into the Ministry of Ocean Economy. And exactly. So the work that's happening in the seafood sector is extremely good. It's a big, big sector for Mauritius. But just transforming the name of a ministry or a department does not work, because what will work for the ocean economy, for the blue economy, is having multi-sector dynamics. You need scientists. You need people with an economic background. You need people with an entrepreneurial background. And of course, you need civil society, you need the private sector, for everyone to come together and build a sustainable blue economy. Because a lot of what we're talking about with the ocean is still uncharted waters. I apologize for the pun. So we need those brains. And this is also where enterprises and young people with ideas come in.
Right. So, I mean, I find that really interesting that you're talking about sort of entrepreneurship within the public sector, and also sort of multilateralism to have everybody. So basically, you need a movement in a way for us to the first step is to value, I guess, inherently value the resource, because everyone in the Philippines knows that, we're number one in beaches and so on and so forth, right? Please don't stay in Manila, right? Please go out to our lovely beaches. But I think the average, my work, whenever we go to a small coastal community and we tell them, please don't dynamite fish the reefs, because this is the heritage to humanity. What about your grandchildren? I mean, they're just gonna turn to me and say, I can't afford to think about my grandchildren. What am I going to feed my children tomorrow? So it sort of goes, I think, hand in hand with, you're right, economic development. But so when we use the words blue economy, I kind of feel like it's like teenage sex. Everybody wants it, but no one's had it. And people don't really, we say we understand it, but we don't, right? So let's actually talk about what we mean about the blue economy, because we can't sort of agree on stuff because it has to be more than fishing. Just so you know, our fishery sector is inefficient. We have, I would say, 27 middlemen between me and the fisher, small fisher. And we're the fourth largest shipbuilder. So we have a maritime, we provide a lot of sailors. And of course we have like some fossil fuel oil drilling stuff. And that's kind of what, if we just think, is the blue economy just stuff in the ocean, right? Or are there other things we can do? Mostly when we get young people in the Philippines to sort of think about the ocean, we use plastic because we're the third largest plastic polluters in the world. So plastic is kind of a gateway drug for them to care about the ocean, but nobody really thinks, I can make money from that. So what's your experience been, and what insights do you have on what is the blue economy?
Okay, I absolutely love the analogies that you're throwing at me. And I agree. Indeed, the blue economy is like teenage sex, where everyone thinks they know what it is, but probably doesn't. Including policymakers, not just in the Philippines, but across the board. And in fact, when the term first started coming about, I think the Pacific Island nations had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do with the blue economy, but the rest of us were just like, yeah, let's get on board this because it sounds cool. So my experience in Mauritius with Seeing Blue has been, when we launched the project, initially what we noticed was, of course, at policy level, a blue economy strategy was drafted. And of course, it mentioned oceans being sustainable, but also the token references to climate change, gender, and youth.
Mm.
But the truth is, and this is something that unfortunately is there, is that a lot of the ocean sectors have, especially the innovative ones, have high barriers to entry. They are capital intensive, they are technology intensive. So this in itself is almost a deterrent for young people from considering a career in the blue economy, from participating actively in the blue economy. We launched Seeing Blue with the idea of setting up a sort of platform to curate those ideas, to show that there is a future in the blue economy. There are ways that you can integrate and actually build the blue economy. And what really struck me with that experience is a lot of the people who participated were young people from the coastal communities, young women, some as young as 13, 15-year-olds, and they had incredible ideas. We had one group design a natural filter barrier for not just physical plastic waste that comes in from the rivers, but also chemical waste. They did the whole research about what it would look like, how it would have a regenerative cycle, and it was incredible. We had another group that designed, so in Mauritius you have a lot of artisanal fishing in the lagoons. So you use bamboo crates, but a lot of this gets lost and causes waste. And they designed a way to track that lost fishing gear. And these are incredible solutions. And I have no doubt that in the Philippines as well, there are many such ideas, because several heads thinking about the oceans are better than a few heads at the top. The less happy thing about this that we noticed is that we didn't have the right resources or the right institutional partnerships that we needed to actually take the ideas from idea stage to incubation and commercialization. So what we need now is to have more partnerships with labs that are willing to give a tinkering space to young people who wish to experiment with ideas, who wish to have an environment where they can test out ideas. We need to mobilize private sector actors because governments traditionally will be slow moving. Sometimes ocean innovations might not even be in the radar until perhaps an incubator within a large private sector firm has opened the eyes that, oh wait, this is something that can be viable. And also, finally, there needs to be that link between research institutions, marine institutions, fishery centers, other centers that deal with data, local data on oceans, and policymaking. And those are things that slowly they will build in an organic way, and then you will reach that tipping point. You also mentioned about the livelihood aspect. This is also where you need those institutional partnerships. Very quickly, in Mauritius, in Rodrigues actually, we had something similar, harpoon fishing of octopus, which is a critical part of the livelihood of Rodrigues people. But the practices being sustainable, the lagoons were being depleted. So this was a project between UNDP, and this is where the community got together, and it was an incredible success. They decided to close octopus fisheries for a month during the gestation. No, 3 months actually. And after 3 months, there was a boom of octopus. During these months, the alternative was offered to young Rodrigues, to the Rodrigues community, to go into farming. So there needs to be this alternative that is offered because otherwise the question of livelihood will always trump considerations about being sustainable.
Yes, I actually think that if you put poverty at the core, then and maybe we can give them sort of, especially because if you're living in extreme poverty under $1.90 a day, right? I mean, then I'd be terrorist taxi too, right? From all other parts of Southeast Asia near us, because it's just not sustainable. I mean, until you have non-violent entrepreneurship that makes more money than violent entrepreneurship, people are going to choose to eat, and they'll sell their human rights for a sack of rice. So I guess that I love what you said about frugal innovations. In a way, just flexing the fund a bit. We're actually looking at a coral farm, actually. So because with all this stuff that the World Economic Forum has highlighted, the science that microfragmentation of coral actually makes it grow 50 times faster, and it's really at 50 cents of a dollar. So we're actually trying to put up a coral farm. 70% of it would be used to revitalize the reefs because dynamite fishing is bad, and then 30% of it would be sold to a sustainable coral to the aquarium market and all this other health and wellness coral calcium kind of thing. So I guess and in a way you just don't have to. I think communities don't have to fertilize it, right? They just have to leave it alone. And I guess it's, but I like how you say that if you're going to leave this alone, we have to give them some sort of an alternative. And I think that's what's missing, both in our community development. But it seems so sort of nebulous. Some of it is very high tech, this blue economy stuff, like, I don't know, generating electricity from tides or something. We will have to. Do you think it's worth it to invest in these things in the blue economy?
Absolutely. Two things. I'm like Dory, I have short-term memory loss. So one thing that I will jump on, you mentioned that people in Manila don't necessarily stay there, but go to coastal areas for tourism. Mm-hmm. With the coral farming, a few models that have worked, not necessarily in Mauritius, but in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, is roping in tourism and coral farming. You have getting the sort of adopt a coral schemes to help people feel good about themselves. You have underwater statues. I think there was a YGL, Jason DeCaires Taylor, who pioneered the underwater statues, starting with Mexico, which sort of draws the pressure away from natural coral reefs, and divers and snorkelers can go to the corals, which themselves act as a frame for corals to grow. So there are different models that we can tinker in, and this is where leveraging networks like the World Economic Forum, like different groups involved in restoring the oceans is very helpful, because you get to see what they are doing, what works, what doesn't work. So we've reached a point where there have been many initiatives, and there's no need to actively reinvent the wheel, because some of it has been done before. And when you're mentioning all the tech and whether it's worth investing, I'll say absolutely yes. Absolutely yes, because someone else is going to invest anyway. One of the examples I always take, and this I'm talking at institutional government level, is ARVs, antiretroviral drugs. One of the core components of some ARVs is a strand that comes from a sponge that was harvested in shallow waters in the Bahamas. Or was it Barbados? I think Bahamas. And if you think, biotechnology is very abstract. There's many governments are averse to actively invest in it because the period from bioprospecting to commercialization can be very long, and sometimes in the developing world we don't have the capacity. But if you think that this humble sponge could lead to one of the most important medicines in the world, then what else can we find in Filipino waters? And this is why we need to invest and make sure that when we're investing, when we're setting up an industry, when we're setting up this kind of innovation, it needs to go along with a good benefit sharing scheme, a good give back scheme that can help to incubate other innovations. So again, institutional partnerships, making sure it's inclusive. And finally, there is this one quote which always rings in my head, from Fred Swaniker. He was saying this in the context of Africa, but I feel it applies to young people in the global South. And he said, the difference between a young African with an idea and a young American in an idea is that the young guy in the garage in Silicon Valley is taken more seriously than the young African. So we really need to start supporting the crowdsourcing of ideas, the brainstorming of ideas around the blue economy, because if we don't do that, other people will do it for us. Just looking at the number of patents that are registered, I think there's maybe a handful of countries that are registering patents, international patents, relating to oceans. But we need to be encouraging young people in ocean countries like the Philippines, like Mauritius, like Seychelles, to do so as well.
And young women, we have to have more Moanas, right? So.
Oh, that goes without saying. In my mind, when I'm talking about young people, with Seeing Blue, the majority of people who applied for the program were young women. It was crazy. It was amazing.
Well, you've actually answered my third question, because Lucian's, I have to go to the next panelist, but very quickly, last thing, what is Seeing Blue and how do we join?
So at the moment we're restructuring Seeing Blue, but a small snapshot of what it is. It is a platform for young people, young islanders, at the moment focused on Mauritius and Seychelles and the surrounding areas, to empower them to champion their oceans. The way it happens is we open up a call for ideas, and once we have those teams come to us with their ideas, we support them with leadership skills, networks, access to people who might help further their ideas. And then we also run a boot camp where we dunk them in the water, quite literally.
Nice.
Take them swimming lessons, take them scuba diving, and just inspire them so that they can inspire us about how they feel about the oceans and just protect it. So this was launched in 2014. We've taken a bit of a break right now as we restructure it and carry it forward. Once we are done restructuring it, I will of course let you know, and hopefully we can have exchanges with the Philippines.
Definitely, I'll help you. We'll set it up here as well, and we'll talk with Anna, and I'll bring in the money. All right.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank you so much, Maui.
Safe. And
Bye.
Bye. Great. So we're back at Building a Better Normal, Making Your Money Matter. And this is the Making Your Money Matter part, I guess. As Barca said, our second speaker, as Barca said, it's really, really important that we all work together to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And if there's one person who I think is very passionate about collaboration, among multiple sectors, multiple age groups, basically everybody to come together to help draw investment towards the SDGs and make them happen. It's our next speaker, Lucian Tarnowski, and you can find his bio on Attendify. So I can't wait to talk to Lucian.
Such a pleasure to be here with you.
Hello, welcome to Philippine Startup Week.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Hello. So I'm just going to jump right into it. As we know, the pandemic has really set back the achievement of the SDGs, and it's so much more important to share knowledge and talent and capital to achieve the SDGs by 2030. How does your work at United Planet and Sivana accelerate this? Why did you found it? What was the big idea? That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to connect the planet in these ways, and the pandemic's created a lot of opportunity for us to do this, and it's important to note where the positives that it's actually had. In kind of when our shared mother sends us to our rooms and says, like, think about your actions.
That's a really good way of putting it.
So well, yeah, the United Planet was actually born from the pandemic. I had the idea previously, but we basically are all about connecting the people and places through play. So we really believe that a game is a very powerful format for us to transform ourselves and our society. Buckminster Fuller, the great systems thinker and futurist, spoke about the New World game as that would emerge in what he called the design science decade, which I believe we're in. And we've been calling this the golden decade. It's the decade where we can really transform every aspect of our society. So I would say, the current social progress index, which is mapping the progress towards the SDGs, is showing the pandemic obviously having a negative impact. But really the pandemic is, in the words of Churchill, never waste a good crisis.
Indeed.
The pandemic is giving us the pattern interrupt in society for us to reimagine every aspect of our society, and also just to see, our education system's broken, our healthcare system's broken, our global governance system's broken, the way we do, frankly, even down to the very design of the world around nations and borders is broken and not fit for purpose. And I'm not saying that nations are going to necessarily go away, but what we think at the United Planet is that nations should not be the leading proprietaries on our future, but rather we need to unleash these millions of us around the world that are loyal first and foremost to the planet. And then we might come from the Philippines or America or Britain or Spain or wherever in the Russia, China, wherever we come from, whatever nation we are in the world. But we're not in the kind of in the totem pole, as it were. Nations have been put on the top for a very long time. Our global institutions that we have, from the World Bank to the
Forum.
CDC to the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is a bit of an anomaly, even with the way nations have been, the way we've organized the world. And so at United Planet, we really believe that it's time for us to start to connect as individuals, as communities, around this shared planetary identity. And so the way we do that is we've developed this game that is, think of it as like the Premier League for systems change. What we're really looking to do is enable transformation to be a sport.
Okay.
Because it's like we sports are the most popular religion by far in our society.
Indeed.
And so we believe for us to deliver on the SDGs and beyond, frankly, one of the best ways we can do that is to gamify people's participation and to celebrate those athletes of our society that are the leading systems changes in every aspect. And so what we've done is created this game, which is all based on the team of 12. So a team of 12 coming together for 90-minute rounds. Typically, a normal game will run for a 6-hour cycle, four times 90-minute rounds. And we will basically tackle a societal challenge, but from a local lens. So it's all about local solutions for planetary thriving. And the whole focus of the game is to tap into our collective intelligence. Because it's when we actually start thinking and acting as an organism, as a hive mind, that I believe we can kind of tap into our, a quantum leap in our potential.
I mean, I think I really love that you're facilitating individuals, because I think the common thing and we have been singing about the ecology since the 60s, right? Since it's almost pop culture, really, and great music. But you get the sensation that even if I put a brick in my toilet tank and I don't, take a bath in a tub and I take quick showers and that sort of thing, you don't feel like you're really making a dent, really, and you feel like all this responsibility is on you. So how do you think United Planet and the game will help change that? And is Savannah still going? I mean, because you still have Savannah.
Exactly. So firstly, I'll just address Savannah. So Savannah set out with a mission, basically to look at how do we connect the talent, the capital, and the knowledge necessary for us to create a thriving civilization for all life. So, we're really like inquiring, and that's where, we created a digital platform that supported multiple communities sharing knowledge. And then we created a space in San Francisco, 8,000 square foot. We took on this incredible kind of iconic mansion right in the heart of San Francisco, built on top of the Well of the Ohlone people. So it's the oldest gathering place in the Bay Area.
Wow.
And there it was the house that gave birth to the Golden Gate Bridge. William Filmer built it, and he was the president of the Golden Gate Bridge project. He actually conceived of the Golden Gate Bridge in the house. So it's got this incredible legacy there. And so we turned it into kind of like an SDG impact lab. But we described it as a prototype planetary embassy, because we have this belief that cities and regions all around the world should have planetary embassies. Our goal is to have 100 planetary embassies by 2030. United Planet embassies. Now, what we did there was we gathered together about 3,000 people from over 1,000 organizations in the first 6 months. And that was like Savannah's mission, was to say, let's really understand collective intelligence of the leading systems changes of our time, of the transition team, as I love to say. I love to joke the band is getting back together, and it's this incredible transition team that you're part of. We're all over the world, and the biggest misconception so many people have is that the future is currently being architected by those currently in power. But there's actually this whole team of people coming up with a completely new system, and it's way better, like way better. And it doesn't have the system limitations that we currently have, built on old democratic systems, but rather like completely embracing new technology. And how do we create a commons and a planetary commons? And so this is what we gathered people, and we put in a 70-person dining room table, and we would host lots of different gatherings around systems change. And that was Savannah's mission. And Savannah basically, from a lot of that inquiry, gave birth to the United Planet. And this is where, to your question, it's like we as individuals can be only so effective. We can do our piece and we can be conscious, and we can recognize this concept of the fractal, that we are like the seed fractal, and we need to live live our piece. But where this gets really interesting is where we can unleash ourselves as as like a sangha, as a community movement of people that are seeing the need for wholesale systems change. And there's so many of us. That's the amazing thing. There's millions of us around the world. We just haven't been fully unleashed yet, and the capital flows haven't yet been designed to truly fund an intelligent design over how do we distribute the innovations that will transform our society. And I think that's what's beginning to happen, and we're about to see the largest amount of capital shift from the existing paradigm, the existing system, which frankly many of us already know is a house of cards, into the next system, which is regenerative, it's win for all, it's got design principles that mirror nature. And nature is like, you look at the cosmos, it's abundant. We've built our system on scarcity, and extraction, and that's like, those two things are not good for us to design our world around. And so that's where I would say, United Planet is really seeing this opportunity of, I would say, people describe it as the opportunity of a lifetime, but I would say it's the opportunity of lifetimes. It's like, this is the most important part ever to be a human, ever. Like, this decade is like the crescendo moment. It's like the Game of Thrones final episode, where it's like, will we make it, won't we make it? And it's like, hey, there's a team of characters beyond your wildest dream. This would make any movie, script look,
it's like
pale,
that end of
pale in comparison, exactly.
Yeah. Well, going back to making your money sort of matter, and while the capital flows haven't actually come up, I actually think that most of the problem, especially here in the Philippines, is that most of the people with money are what I like to call OMGs. They're old mainstream guys. They made their money in retail and real estate. But most of the people who really, really care about the SDGs are young people who don't have much cash. And how do you bridge the gap between? Bridge the gap between that? Is it a generational thing? I mean, and I think most people don't realize that even if they have no cash, everyone is an investor, because everyone has some sort of a pension, or at least can buy products that are environmentally. Is that it? Are we just buying good stuff at the grocery? How are we limited to that? I mean, because some of the big changes we're going to need are going to take a lot of money. And should we wait for the old mainstream guys to catch up? Because otherwise, oh my God, Totally.
Well, so Mao, I think this is like the question. It's like, where the hell is the money? Like, why are so many people on the front line that are doing incredible work? Why are they needing to make trade-offs? That's like, I could do good for the world, or I could make money. What a ridiculous concept, right? Like, let's end those days where we need to make trade-offs between like doing what the world needs and what my community needs of me, and like prioritizing making money. That is an insane world that we've created, and we need to recognize that. So the second thing, I'm gonna give two stats that I think are very shine a light on this issue. So one is the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is something that I pay a lot of attention to every year. And it's a global survey, so it's a truly, I think they survey about 30,000 people to look at this. And that shows that 4 out of 5 people in the world believe the system is not working, that it's broken, the system at large, the global financial system and beyond, the world of nations, etc. So 80% of people in the world believe the current system isn't working. Now, surprise, it's kind of obvious, when you see what's going on, that's not a surprising stat. the concerning part of this stat is 2/3, 66%, 2/3 of people think the future is going to be even worse than the present. And so that's the backdrop that a lot of people are having basically a crisis of confidence in the existing system. So let's look at the flows of money now. So right now it's been suggested that there is a $2 to $5 trillion funding gap each year for the SDGs, that there's roughly about a $50 to $60 trillion funding gap between what we're currently spending and what we need to spend on the SDGs. The reality is a lot of people, organizations, governments are paying lip service to the SDGs, but aren't actually putting the capital behind their intentions. And so, surprise, surprise, the Social Progress Index that tracks the delivery on the SDGs says that we're currently on track to hit them in 2092. Ridiculous, embarrassment for humanity, unacceptable. So let's look at the positive stats. Well, we're currently in the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. There's currently
boomers.
Yeah, so even just from the families of wealth, and when you look at where that wealth is transitioning to, there's $50 trillion. Sorry, it's $60 trillion between now and 2052, transitioning from one generation to the next. Now, interestingly, 70% of that capital is going to the hands of women. The amount, exactly, it's like, yes, finally, let's fix this, masculine dominated, so 70% is going to the hands of women. And when you look at the investment thesis, the investment focus of those inheritors of wealth versus those that are currently the stewards of wealth, there's a drastic difference between interest in environmental and social investments, or not just interest, that's the first and foremost, that all investments should be environmental and socially, all investments should be impact investments. It's kind of obvious, and there's a generational shift happening, and there's the biggest tidal wave of capital the planet has ever seen transitioning to the next generation. And I would go a step further to argue that a lot of these families that are inheriting this wealth, actually have a direct responsibility, different than responsibility, to steward that wealth as like this elegant participation, this elegant, if you like, story that's unfolding. Because first and foremost, I believe that what's unfolding is a story. It's the greatest story ever told. This notion of from family karma to planetary dharma is what I've been calling it. But it's not random that the Rockefellers are suing big oil. That me as a seventh generation grandson of John Jacob Astor, one of the kind of industrial families of the US, it's not random that I'm dedicating my life to the United Planet. And what I would say is that quite often the way families have created their wealth will give them the manure, if you like, the rich
fertilizer.
Soil, the fertilizer to define their own role in this transition. And if we can flip the script and see that actually these families of inherited wealth could be part of the solution, and they could be part of the key holders, because there's this immense amount of wealth, $60 trillion transitioning. If we could show that actually that generation of wealth inheritors are part of the capital key holders to unlock this immense amount of capital required to deliver on the SDGs, that is one of the ways that we can get more funding to the front line. The other thing I would say is just we're duplicating, we are repeatedly funding silos. We're funding competition versus cooperation. We are there's a real lack of intelligence over actually what solutions we need. So there's a huge amount of data missing from how we're actually delivering on the SDGs. And so, that's one thing where we're saying, look, if we could gamify this and we could introduce like a World of Warcraft almost concept, where teams are working on solutions and applied collective intelligence and then delivering on those solutions through this game format, we could be a lot more intelligent. We could function as the largest organism on the planet in terms of like, you've got mycelium, etc. Humanity is like hasn't quite got across to the threshold. The internet's the closest thing we've got, but we haven't quite yet tapped into our unbelievable collective intelligence and collective creativity. We haven't quite harnessed that concept fully to not just deliver on the SDGs, which has got things like, zero hunger and reduced inequalities. What we're about is food abundance and win for all, thriving for all. It's the SDGs, as a dear friend of mine put it, as a bit like if McDonald's, when McDonald's put salad on the menu, salad's a good thing, it's a good thing. Thank you, McDonald's, for having choice and salad on the menu, but you're still in a McDonald's. And so this is where, the SDGs have come out of the existing system, and they're kind of addressing symptoms of the existing system. What we're talking about is going to the root cause. And that's where we can actually go beyond the SDGs, because part of it is like, where do we want to limit humanity's horizons? Do we want reduced inequalities, or do we want thriving for all? It's like we can really celebrate and embrace the positive. And I think that's the moment we're in, where there's truly the time for a new story that is about that is one of abundance. It's one of win for all. It's one of borderless. It's open to all people across the world, and it's really about designing a thriving planetary civilization in harmony with all life. Is my best description of what this is about. And I think those days are upon us.
Yeah, I think that the SDGs are a really great billboard, and we have to sort of come up with a dashboard of where we want to go, right? You want to hit those, they're like dots on a map, right? You want to hit those, but you don't want to live there, right? You're going further than that. So I really like this vision of all of us need all of us. And certainly the pandemic has brought forward this narrative, because you might not have cared about a small fisher in the Philippines before, but obviously a better life for him means safety for you and your family as well, right? Because this is the nature of a pandemic. Hungry people get sick faster than we don't flatten the curve. But speaking about, since this is the story, isn't it also the narrative that we keep talking about the costs of the SDGs, like, oh, it costs this much. I feel like people who have money go like, oh, the SDGs sounds expensive. As opposed to, the poor are already overpaying for services. Water is not a trend. If, you put up a satellite to give broadband internet access to every Filipino, that would be great, because even if 97% of our people are on Facebook, 60% of us don't have access to broadband speed internet. We are the second to the slowest in Asia. The only country that has slower internet than us is Afghanistan. So that's humiliating. So just all of that is like your basic utility company, like the robber barons. You could make money from that. I think the average, so according to the World Economic Forum, the data they have is that the usual return for impact investments in Southeast Asia is about 15%, which is 3 times your money in 6 years. That seems like a pretty good deal to me. Are we sort of doom and glooming everybody, which is why the capital isn't flowing, or angel investors don't want to look at that, or what do you think?
Oh, it's such a multifaceted question. I think
It is. Sorry.
No, it's the you're getting right to the show me the money, and it's I think this is the point, is that society is schizophrenic is the first thing we need to recognize, and we can actually look at the origins of this. That when in the US, and it was with the East India Company began this.
Right.
When a company was incorporated, we actually split the mandate of a for-profit and a not-for-profit. We created this schism of purpose, and we created this schizophrenic system, which is either you're about making money or you're about having impact in the world. And that narrative is so bankrupt. It's so I'm just conscious of there's someone's mowing out here. Are you okay? Cool. Okay.
So yeah.
So they seem to be getting closer, but this schizophrenic system that we have, we need all investments to be impact investments, and we need to look at the ways we're systematically funding change. So issues like broadband in the Philippines, and like internet access, internet penetration in the Philippines, actually needs to become a planetary issue, not a national issue.
Right.
And that's where planetary innovations, you've got, like, just in that camp, there's some really interesting innovations happening with Google, with Facebook, with with internet.org and things like that are looking to address the digital divide. Because the reality is, if you are if you're a 10-year-old girl, and in one country you have access to the sum total of human knowledge, aka the internet, and in another country you don't, the difference between haves and have-nots we're talking about different worlds we're being raised in right there. And that's unacceptable to have to perpetuate these inequalities that we've had, these like drastic inequalities, because inequalities now have spiked. The gaps between the wealthy and the poor is huge and growing. And so we need to very quickly address these systemic issues and see them not as like just challenges of the Philippines, but see these as planetary challenges that a game that's all about planetary innovation can address.
Excellent. So we're out of time, but it was so lovely to talk to you, and definitely I hope everybody joins and starts playing on the United Planet team. I think it's the one place where I can actually be an athlete, because I'm physically fit. But I'm
you
happy
are
to
an
say
athlete, Mao. You are, absolutely. You are, and we are, and my biggest message here, I would say, just as a kind of closing word, is that one of the most powerful things we can have is childlike faith that we've done this, that we got this, that the team is here, that every aspect of, think of it as like every pillar of civilization, every aspect, every brick of the temple is being worked on by someone, somewhere, some team. And there is an intelligence at play here that goes beyond ourselves. I describe humanity as like we're a living system, and there's an intelligence that no individual is able to quite fully understand, but I know it's there, that we're actually operating in this phenomenal orchestra of like the greatest orchestra ever assembled. And this is the decade where we're going to do it. And if you're watching this, you're already on the team. You're already in the band. And we are unstoppable in such a point that I believe with confidence that we've done this, and I anchor every decision I make based on that belief that we've done this, that we really do rise to the challenge and meet the moment, and that we can redesign every aspect of our system to be one that is based on justice, based on thriving for all. And I'll finish with what we have with the United Planet. We created an oath, the United Planet Oath, which goes like this. It's very simple. We are the United Planet. I am an Earth Guardian. On my honor, I commit to a thriving civilization in harmony with all life.
That's very quick and simple. Thank you very much, Lucian. It was lovely to talk to you. Bye.
Such a pleasure, Mal. Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.
So, we've heard from 3 young global leaders about how we can actually build a better normal post-COVID. If you want to see what I think that's going to look like for our country, it's to invest in things that are fairer, stronger, safer, and cleaner. Not individually, but holistically. Basically, as we say in this country, all at a time. Not just one at a time. Because you can find businesses that make it fairer, stronger, safer, and cleaner. And if you do that, we will not just build a better Philippines, you will have more income from your investment, and your family will be safer because other Filipinos have a better life. How do we do that? Well, 3 years ago, I started the Ignite Impact Fund. Me and 2 other co-founders from the United States. We are the first Philippine-focused impact investment fund. What does that mean? Well, on the right side of this spectrum, you have philanthropy. These people only want to help others. They don't really care about making money as long as they give you a tangible, measurable, feelable impact. Right? These guys, on the other end, right, is your normal financial investing. Okay? These guys want to make money and they hope they don't have to harm the environment or treat people badly. Okay? When you invest in something that is in financial investing, they try to make 6 times your money in 6 years. So if you invest 100,000, they hope to give you 600,000 back, right? For finance geeks, that's about 35% internal rate of return. Ignite is in the middle. And that's what impact investing is. We think you can do good and do well at the same time. So we would also give you tangible, measurable impact. Not in Manila, but in the rural areas where, in your hometown, where it would really make a difference. And at the same time, you would get 3 times your money in 6 years. So if you invested 100,000, you get 300,000 pesos back. And that's what we're trying to do at Ignite Impact Fund. If you think your startup can be part of the better normal and a better future, please join us in an info session about our metrics, our standards for accepting potential portfolio companies. We're going to be talking about that in the Q&A, but it's on December 10 at 2 p.m. Okay, so I hope to see you then, December 10, 2 p.m. The registration form is going to be, the link is going to be in the Q&A. So please stay and join us so we can chat with our speakers, and you can chat with me as well. Thanks very much for your time.